Ash, I believe it's time to get up. Huh. Cracking his eyes open, Ash found himself looking up at a familiar ceiling. He let out a yawn before the voice spoke up again. Today's the day again, remember? He asked, looking a little surprised to hear his voice was a bit deeper, though it still had a slight rasp to it. This time he recognized it. And realized it was coming from right beside his bed. Mewtwo. I believe, Mewtwo would be a bit more accurate for my current state. What? He quickly over the side, only to find a shiny Meowth looking up at him calmly. And standing upright like Team Rocket's Meowth. However, instead of the usual narrow pupils, it had an unmistakable pair of oval, purple-toned eyes. Ash just stared at the Pokémon in silence for a second before speaking. So, it wasn't a dream. He looked up as a sudden spark of realization hit him, and he immediately started looking under the bed. What are you doing? Mewtwo asked, raising an eye. Looking for where Red stashed his porn. He declared with an intensity Brock would have been proud of. I have over 4 years of repressed puberty to take care of, then I can go back to acting like a 10-year-old. Mewtwo couldn't resist and let out an amused chuckle, shaking his head at his friend's antics. Actually, given the way time and space of both realities have joined together, the starting age for Pokémon trainers is now 14. Congratulations, you're no longer stuck as a pre-adolescent. Ash froze for a moment while that sunk in, before giving Mewtwo a toothy grin. Definitely hunting down that stash. So, are you going to get to Professor Oak's early this time around? He asked, deciding to change the subject. And not get Pikachu again. No thanks. Ash replied, feeling up under the bed for anything. Point taken. Mewtwo watched as, deeming that search a failure, he began digging through the bedside table. That seems too obvious a spot. He commented. Here, this'll go much faster if we both look. He mentally thanked Arceus for just giving him the appearance of a Meowth and let loose with his telekinesis. One by one, he dismantled the pieces of furniture in the room, extracting and examining everything, making sure he put it back as he left it. No sense leaving a mess, even if he'll be gone for a while. Ha! Found it! Ash yelled, pulling up a couple of loose floorboards he'd stepped on. With a flourish, he pulled out a magazine storage box. Let's see what we got. He yanked the top off and peered in, his face turning red after a moment. Mewtwo looked as well. It was only half full, but the one on the top, titled, Pokesports Illustrated, had a familiar figure on the cover, leaning affectionately against a Starmie. Well, that makes sense. Considering how he acted, I doubt Red would have had this. A whole Ash Ketchum, on the other hand, this time it was his turn to grin. Have a taste for busty redheads, do we? Ash just took the issue out, staring at the cover the whole time. Misty. Sure enough, it was the youngest member of the Cerulean City gym leaders, with her hair down and wearing a pink slingshot bikini. However, this Misty had ample proof that puberty had smiled on her. The material somehow managed to hug her impressively developed breasts, giving a teasing view of her nipples and making it seem as if she just had body paint on. And it probably would have been if not for how the back strap bridged across her arched back, showing off a pair of firm-looking buns and surprisingly long legs. Looking at the sight, he could swear she had a heart-shaped Pokeball tattooed on her left cheek. When the hell did she become a hottie? Mewtwo looked over at the clock and made his way to the door. I'll leave you to your catching up. While he wasn't a real feline Pokemon, Mewtwo would happily admit that lounging in the warm sun was quite pleasant. Stretching, he got back to his feet and looked back at the door. He'd been rather surprised to see that the door had opened outside instead of inside the house. Even more so at seeing that Ash's bedroom was somewhat off from the main building. Seeing Delia Ketchum through the kitchen window confirmed this. Like he'd moved out, but didn't at the same time. This is definitely going to be an interesting experience, he told himself, watching a couple of Farfetch'd flying overhead. Then again, it already was in a way. Apparently in this world, at least according to Arceus, trainers were more or less considered adults once they received their starter Pokémon. It did make sense in a way. After all, they were heading out on their own into a world filled with creatures that could do Well, damn near anything. And some had a reputation for being nasty. He was proof enough before he met Ash. Meowth. He spun around to see Delia looking at the window at him. Yes, Mrs. Ketchum. Thankfully, Arceus had let him know that to Ash's mom and most of Pallet Town, he was a wild Pokémon that had taken a preference to hanging out at the Ketchum residence, and that he'd learned to talk while there. A fairly basic, yet convenient backstory for him if he did say so. Do you know if Ash is up? He's going to miss his chance if he doesn't hurry. I'll go check. He quickly headed back to the room, cursing himself for losing track of time and hoping Ash was finished. Ash, are you? He trailed off for a second when he saw Ash was done and already getting dressed. Now that he had a moment to examine things, Muowth noticed that he was considerably taller. When they first met, he remembered Ash being around 5.5 feet. Now, he stood at a good 6 feet. Possibly a couple inches over that. His hair seemed to have taken traits from both his halves, now resting in a sort of fluffy bedhead style. He also saw that while he was no Machoke, there was some visible definition. Mental note: if a girl sees him without a shirt on, make sure I'm not in between them. He noted that Ash's attire was somewhat different now as well. Instead of the Pokémon League Expo hat he must not have won or entered this time around, Muowth thought his was jet black with a white Pokeball emblem on it. He still had the black t-shirt and gloves, though his coat was dark blue with red trim around the waist and opening. And his pants were tucked into a pair of black and red high tops. Well, how do I look? He asked, adjusting his cap. Like a guy who's currently running late to get a Pokémon, according to his mother. Muowth replied, pointing to the clock. Oh shit. He yelped. I gotta get going. But you wanted to be late. Yeah, but I'd prefer not to have to deal with Gary's grandstanding. He made sure everything to where it was and rushed out, Muowth right behind him. I'll be back in a few minutes, Mom. He called out, running to Professor Oak's lab. I'll go ahead and get breakfast on the way then. Delia called back. Ash was seriously tempted to kick in his aura power to get there quicker, but thought against it. During his training, Arceus taught him that while aura let you pick up on the minds and actions of others, and detect the auras of others, it could be used to enhance speed and strength as well. So far he could safely shatter a 4x6 plank. Using it on full he could dent a steel plate, though it hurt like hell. Speed-wise, he could hit 30 miles an hour, except he only had 10 minutes at best before it left him winded. Ah crap, Ash muttered, realizing that history was about to repeat itself. A small crowd was gathered around the one person he didn't want to run into today, complete with his cheerleader squad. Maybe if we just keep running. Unfortunately, said person spotted him. Well, look what the Meowth dragged out. The unmistakably smug tone of Gary Oak rang out as he stepped out into Ash's way, forcing him to grind to a halt. So, where's your start? There was a collective gasp from the group and a few of the cheerleaders as Ash quickly put up a hand to stop him. Gary, we both know what you're trying to pull. Ash muttered, looking less than amused and pointing to the Pokeball in Gary's hand. I can see you've already gotten a Pokémon, so this whole thing is to get everyone to cheer and stroke your already huge-ass ego. And you thought going out of your way to try and rub at my face would boost it even more. Hey, you can't do that to Gary. One of his cheerleaders shouted. Yeah, he's Professor Oak's grandson. You're just a. I know who he is. He pinned the girl with a glare, making her squeak at the tone he used. I also don't care and have more important things to do right now. So, Gary, I'll leave you to your admirers. With that, he stepped around the gobsmacked teen and resumed his trek. Arrogance doesn't suit you. Not that it really does for anyone. Muowth commented, running to catch up with Ash. I can't believe him. The first cheerleader fumed. You gotta admit, that was kind of impressive. A third chimed in, a noticeable blush on her cheeks. Never seen anyone shut Gary down like that. Who cares? You see those biceps? A fourth giggled, her face even redder. Woo. Cheerleader 4 looked down at the heart Gary Oak shirt she had on. Think he might have an opening for a cheer squad. Meanwhile, Gary just stared as Ash and the Meowth walked off. What just happened? Well, I have to say, you took the wind out of his sails. Muowth said, once they neared the Oak residence. After how smug he was the first time, cutting him off would be a lot more satisfying. We might have buried the hatchet after the Indigo conference, but until then, he never missed a chance to remind me that I was right behind him. Ash snorted in annoyance. Didn't help that a few people in town helped by putting him on a pedestal, just 'cause he's the professor's grandson. Maybe, just maybe, this'll get him to pull his head out a little earlier. Perhaps. For now, though, I believe we have a certain electric mouse to meet again. Right. The two entered the lab to find Oak jotting down something on a clipboard. Professor Oak, I'm here for my starting Pokémon. The man looked up. Oh, Ash. And Meowth. I really wish you'd let me study you. He finished, slightly under breath but still loud enough for them to hear. Muowth simply gave a feline grin. And I told you if you could catch me, then you could. And you haven't. No, Oak hung his head. Ash raised a brow. What are you talking about? Muowth simply shrugged. He saw me while I was having a discussion with one of the local Pokémon. He made sure to leave out the fact he was threatening to toss that Rhyhorn like a shuttlecock if it didn't stop mocking the pink on his tail. Anyway, after fangirling. I did not. Oak protested. I was simply caught off guard by a Pokémon that could communicate in a human tongue. Right. Muowth glanced his way. After you fangirled, you begged me to let you run a few tests on me to see if this was possible to replicate, or a 1 in a million shot. And I agreed to, if you could capture me. I came close one time. You tried to pretend you were an Oddish. Ash quickly, and loudly, cleared his throat to get their attention. While this is entertaining, can I get my starting Pokémon? Oh, yes, right. Doing his best to look dignified after having an argument with a Pokémon, and losing, he turned over to where a trio of Pokeballs were sitting. I'm afraid I have good news and bad news. The bad news is, there are only 3 starters, a Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle. And Gary just left with the last one. Why am I not surprised? The good news is, I do have one Pokémon. There was a sudden pop of a Pokeball opening, followed by a mass of crackling electricity rocketing its way towards Ash. Pika Pie. Wah! Oak's jaw dropped a little as the Pikachu he'd recently caught zipped up onto Ash's shoulder and started chattering excitedly. While he couldn't catch what was being said, Ash and Muowth, on the other hand. Holy hell, it's about time you got here, Ash. Pikachu ranted, stretching to get a crick out of his back. What the heck kept you? You know I hate being cooped up in that thing. Sorry, but I had to make sure we still met up. I only got to choose you 'cause I was late last time. So, you could have gotten here at 11. Why'd you wait until 2? Ash scratched the back of his head. I got a little distracted. They both caught the snort of amusement from Muowth. Hearing this, Oak's jaw dropped even farther. Ash, why you can speak Pokémon? He looked like was about to dive over the table. This is unbelievable. Hearing Meowth was unreal enough, but what were you two talking about? Nothing important. Ash and Muowth both took a step back. Keeping things on the down low except for those who know. Pikachu gave a knowing wink. Gotcha. Sue, should I be zapping you then? He shrugged. Not unless you really want to. Was hit with Thunderbolt so much in the last time, I think I've gotten a tolerance to it. Okay. Pikachu cracked his knuckles. Pika-chu. Muowth quickly threw up a shield around himself as Ash was engulfed in a massive burst of lightning that lasted for several seconds. Feel better? He asked once the shock stopped, not even registering it. Just like old times. Pikachu said wistfully. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's get out there and get the band back together. Thanks, Professor. Now I gotta head back home to eat and get packed. Bye. Good luck, Ash. That's new. Oak commented after they'd, noticing that Ash looked completely unharmed from the surge. He mentally added that to his stuff to research list. That and Pikachu. It had been antagonistic towards literally every other human that so much as got near it, yet it was instantly overjoyed to see Ash. Like they were old friends. He mulled over it before finally landing on the only rational reason. That boy must have a supreme natural talent as a trainer. Outside, Muowth picked up on the professor's thoughts and couldn't help himself, letting out a raspy cackle. Feeling a bit of empty nest syndrome, Mrs. Ketchum? He asked. A little. A sigh escaped her lips. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy for him, honestly, but I'm still going to miss him. Par for the course in being a good parent, isn't it? Pikachu asked, Muowth translating for him. Be a little hard to respect you if you didn't. He's got a point. The disguised Pokemon added. Though, if it helps, he'll be back in time for the Indigo Conference. That and we'll remind him to call whenever he gets the chance. This seemed to cheer her up some. Yeah, you're right. Both of you. Just going to be a little odd having no one else here, at least, aside from Professor Oak's visits. A couple of minutes later, Ash came back with his gear. Okay, guess we better get going. Take care, sweetie, Delia said, going over to kiss him on the cheek. You sure you have everything? Clothes. Enough for a week before they need washing. Money. All the cash I've saved up for the last 3 years. Other stuff. Comb, toothbrush, deodorant, even that body spray you thought it'd be amusing to get me. Okay. She grinned and hugged him. Be careful, all right. And call me as soon as you can. I will. Come on, guys, Ash said, watching Muowth and Pikachu head out the door. Bye, Mom. Bye. Soon as the door closed, she looked around. Well, this is going to be a new experience. They were just reaching the road leading out of town when they heard someone calling out. Ash, you forgot this. Professor Oak called out, holding out a Pokédex and a Pokéball belt. Oh crap. Can't believe I did that. Ash thought. Oh, hey. Thanks, Professor. He said, securing the equipment. At least Gary wasn't here to see that. He'd jump on it like a primape. Well, given what's transpired so far today, I'd say it's understandable. Muowth's voice echoed faintly in his head. Now, you better hurry. Odds are Gary's probably making a beedrilling towards the nearest gym, won't take him long with that car. Oak scratched his head. How'd he convince those girls to drive him, anyway? Probably too lazy to put the effort in. Ash mutters. Anyway, he might have a car, but I got something I doubt he'll ever do. Oak watched as he zipped both Pokemon up into his coat. Suddenly both of Ash's lower legs were wrapped in a bluish-white light, right before he took off at a speed that was normally reachable only while riding one. Bye. Ash's voice trailed off as he vanished around the bend, leaving a gobsmacked professor. Once he was able to gather his thoughts, Oak could only respond in one way. Wow, what just happened? Woohoo! Pikachu yelled, feeling the breeze in his face. Now this is traveling. He laughed at a certain Spearow that squawked in surprise as they dashed past. Not this time, Beaky. Muowth let out a smirk of his own before it turned into a look of recalling. Ash, you may want to slow down. I think we passed the 4-mile marker back there. Also, there's something we need to take care of before we continue. Okay. He was still working on his stops, so he needed another 40 feet or so of deceleration before they came to a standstill. Once that happened, he let them both out. It'd be a bit before he make that sprint again, so they continued at a more sedate pace. I want you to use a Pokeball on me. Muowth said, his tone surprisingly calm. You want me to catch you? Ash looked at him in confusion. Why? To put it bluntly, last thing I want to deal with people trying to catch me if they learn I'm a wild Pokemon. Especially since my current form is a shiny. I've already had to dissuade a couple of trainer hopefuls back in Pallet Town from the idea, and while the looks on their faces was amusing, it gets old rather fast. So at least doing this will nip that problem in the bud. Also, catching me will allow you to send me out in battles. The Scratch Cat imitator's grin widened. Ash mulled over it for a moment. Near as he knew, there wasn't a rule saying a Pokemon couldn't make itself look like another. Hell, Dittos did that all the time, but no one ever complained about that. Besides, Muowth was right about it keeping others from bugging him with attempted captures. Okay. He unclipped a ball and activated it. Here you go. He tossed it to Muowth, who let it bounce off his head and suck him in. It flickered once, twice, and 3 times before letting out the familiar ding of a successful capture. A few seconds later, and he was back out. Huh, so that's what the inside of a Pokeball is like. Muowth mused. A little on the dull side, though. Now you know why I hate being in mine. Pikachu replied. They never tell you that it's boring as hell in those things. Could at least add a TV or something in it. Okay, got one more thing to take care of, then we can get down to business. Ash said as he took a look at their surroundings, a satisfied look crossing his face. Yeah, this spot's familiar. What are you? Pikachu started asking when he saw him walk over to the nearby stream. Wait, isn't that the one we fell in last time? Ash, what are you gonna do? Meet you guys downstream, he said, hopping into the water. The current quickly brought him along. Are you nuts? Pikachu yelled, running to try and keep pace. Unfortunately, the current proved to be a little faster. Ash, there are less Zubitshit insane ways to meet a girl. At least wait for us. Insane, yes. But this way'll certainly get her attention. Can't deny that. Muowth said, levitating them both to catch up. Misty's paw. Watching the bobber on her fishing never leave its spot, something it had been doing the last hour or so, Misty let out a dejected groan. Why did I think there'd be anything here? She asked herself. She'd been there for a few hours and had yet to get so much as a nibble. Maybe I should just try somewhere else. She started to get up when her pole suddenly bowed towards the water, forcing her to brace herself. Whoa! She yelped, pulling as hard as she could. Maybe it's a Kingdra. Her feet dug into the dirt as her catch pulled back. Oh, or a Poliwrath. Come on, you rascal. With on a near war cry, she tugged with everything she had, falling backwards as her prize came flying out. Hearing it thump onto the ground beside her, she quickly grabbed a Pokeball. Got. You, her voice faded as she saw what, or rather, who she'd caught. Sitting up a couple feet away was a young man, noticeably taller than her. The Pokeballs on his belt showed he was a trainer, but it was the way his soaked shirt clung to a clearly defined chest, along with the look he was giving her, that had her face turning redder than a Vulpix. Oh my gosh. She squealed internally, unable to believe her luck. She was hoping to catch a new water Pokemon, or some lunch at the very least. Instead, she'd landed a cute boy, one that somehow looked familiar. Hey Misty. He said, catching her off guard. Long time no see. Wah. She looked at him in utter confusion. How do you know my name? Instead of answering, he glanced over at her bike while getting back to his feet. Hey, don't have a mess of Perros after me this time, so don't have to worry about replacing your ride this time, huh? The moment he said that, she twitched slightly as memories flooded her mind and as she found herself immediately remembering. Ash. Yep. I know, I look a lot different now. Ash. She cried out happily, tackling him. The impact proved to be enough to knock him several feet back. By the time they landed, she had both her arms and legs around him and her lips locked furiously onto his. She purred, sinking blissfully into the situation until she realized exactly what she'd done, especially as she felt his hands resting on her ass. With an embarrassed squawk, she leapt off him, her face bright red. Sorry, dunno what, that is, oh wow. Oh, sorry about that, Misty. He said, getting up again. Didn't mean to grab you there. Did feel nice, though. Hang on, let me deal with this. He pulled his coat off and started to wring it out. Gotta admit, you look good. In more ways than one. He thought, finding it hard to tear his gaze off her. While she still dressed like she did the first time they met, it was a considerably different style. Her yellow top now resembled a zip-up leotard, cut off just high enough to give a peek of her ample breasts. A pair of Daisy Dukes so tight they looked like a thong on her figure rested on her hips, and a pair of red suspenders that looked like they were made to hold her shorts up, but they only succeeded in accentuating her curvaceous figure. Look amazing, he added under his breath. Oh, hey, thanks. She blushed cutely, digging the toe of her shoe in the dirt. You look pretty good too, now that you, her voice cut off with a squeak as she watched him pull his shirt off, showing of a torso that had her hormones singing in delight. He worked on wringing his shirt out as best he could, causing a few stray trickles of water to run down his stomach. Finally. I didn't think we went that far last time. Hey, Misty, long time no see. Pikachu called out once he and Mew-OWTH caught up, trailing off when he saw her tackle a shirtless Ash. Look at that interesting cloud. Mew-OWTH tapped Pikachu on the shoulder. Looks a bit like an Arcanine. Oh yeah. He quickly joined him in examining the cloud. Kinda turns into a Glaceon if you squint. You have no idea how much I missed you. Misty panted, kissing him with everything she had. She mentally smiled when she felt his hands on her rear again, the light squeeze showing this time it wasn't by accident. Same. He managed to get out, gently digging his fingers into the firm globes and being rewarded with a soft moan. The two lost themselves in each other's embrace until a loud throat clearing made them look over at the Pokémon. Not to disrupt this rather touching moment, no pun or sarcasm intended, but Mew-OWTH pointed to some storm clouds heading their way, a rumble of thunder accentuating the sight. I strongly suggest we find a place to bunk down for the time being. Yeah, we electric types might not mind a little lighting, but the voltage always leaves me wired for a while. Pikachu hopped up onto Ash's shoulder, tapping a foot on the muscle. Damn, Ash. You haven't missed shoulder and chest day at all. Not sure what's odder, that I just understood your Meowth, or I'm not as surprised as I should be. Misty commented. It's a long story, but right now he's got a point. We better find shelter. Ash said, stuffing the soaked shirt into his bag. No point putting it back on if they get rained on. Well, I remember passing a small cave on the way here. Misty pointed off down the road. If we're quick, we should get there before it gets bad. As she gathered up her stuff, Mew-OWTH felt the need to state something. Interesting. Ash, she does have a tattoo there. He pointed to her rear where the poke heart was. Oh, hey. Misty blushed again. Yeah, my sisters took me partying when I became a trainer. Think I had a little too much, because it's kind of a blur after that, and woke up the next morning with it. My sisters wouldn't let me get rid of it, saying it's my lesson to be more responsible. Actually kind of cute. Ash replied. And the spot you pick for it is pretty nice to look at too. He grinned when her cheeks turned even redder. Wait. How did you know I had one? The issue of Poke Sports Illustrated that has you on the cover. Mew-OWTH answered. It's one of the magazines he had hidden in his room. Oh, she smiled and bit her lip. Well, I still have the bikini, though it's probably a little small for me now. She stepped up until she and Ash were almost touching. Play your cards right, and maybe you'll get to see for yourself. This time it was his turn to turn red as she kissed him and turned back to packing up. Once she was done, they all headed to the bike. Always wondered why I got a two-seater. Dibs on the back. Ash promptly hopped on the rear seat. Just a quick thanks to crossover pairing lover for the heads up about what to expect in the fandom. 2. Also, due to not wanting to get jumped on for it, there'll be a higher rated alternative on AO3.